American democracy or American republic? A man who does not read might as well be a man who cannot read. That's kind of a smarty thing to say, but that's what I've been doing mostly since I retired about 20 years ago. I've been reading translations of what the ancient Greeks did in their system of government, and I've been reading what the founding fathers wrote as they were fighting the Revolutionary War and creating our system of government. America, democracy or republic? Most Americans say America is a democracy, but they're wrong. They can't even provide an authoritative source who supports their belief. So what? Who cares? Does it matter? Yes, it does. To your children. Whenever the founding fathers in Philadelphia at the convention finished with the with the Constitution, they sent it to the states. And they convened committees of men who were going to read the new Constitution and decide after discussion whether or not they should approve it. And if 9 states approved it, it would become the law of the land. At least the Constitution would. So James Madison realized that there were a lot of people who would be interested in our system of government, and they would want it to be a democracy. The reason for that is that when people read the Declaration of Independence, they think of democracy. It's the most beautiful document, and it beautifully describes a democracy. So he wanted to disabuse them of that because he believed that democracies were a big mistake. So he wrote Federalist 10, which is an essay about 3,000 words that he would send out to the states so the men who were analyzing the Constitution would realize from the get-go that we shouldn't be thinking about a democracy. He said, in effect, that America isn't a democracy, so the Constitution that you have in your hand is not a democratic government. And it cannot be because there are all kinds of problems with a democracy. He continued by praising the advantages of a Republican form of government, and then he dropped the hammer of criticism on democracies. He said that democracies are not civilized. They are made up of mobs. And then he said, and this is sort of a summary, he said that hence it is that such democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. None of those things are true. The history books that were available to him and the other framers said things like that, but they weren't true. But his catalog of deficiencies of democracies takes more than 3,000 words to convey. And here it is again: democracies live short, tumultuous lives and die violent deaths and do not respect the rights of private property. Any nation would be a fool to adopt a democratic system of government. Our republic, on the other hand, springs from the Constitution. It does not inspire us because there's no democracy in it, but it does describe in general terms our system of government, which is a republic. Unfortunately, this republic governs us. The Constitution is designed to serve the rich and powerful by protecting their fortunes and sources of income, while dividing among the rich and powerful the money supply, and other valuable national resources and assets, such as minerals of all kinds, potable fresh water, timber, cheap labor, and the like. America was the richest country in the world. And these guys were going to divide it up. The Declaration is designed to induce the lower classes to make sacrifices for the benefit of the upper classes, such as low pay, going to war, unsafe working conditions, a lack of rights, resources, opportunities, and protections that the lower classes need to have a fair and honest chance to build long lives worth living for themselves and their loved ones. What exactly remains to be unfinished? The answer depends on what you expected America to have accomplished by now. If you expected America to use its natural and human resources for the common good of all citizens, then it has failed, and miserably. Our system of government and economics routinely mistreat the great majority of the people. But on the other hand, if you expected America to use its natural and human resources only for the good of the rich and powerful, then it has succeeded, and wildly. Our systems of government and economics routinely favor the rich and powerful, a minority of our population. Our misuse of our national resources has led to waste and even to the onrushing catastrophe of global warming. Upon my retirement, I began to follow the simple process used by my generation of systems engineers as we computerized America and the world. I began by reading the documentation of our systems of government and economics. Our most important national document is the Declaration of Independence. It tells us what our systems of government and economics are required to do for us, the people. America's Declaration of Independence defines or describes America's government. Unfortunately, we never made it into law, so it doesn't exist anywhere except in our imaginations. It is the most democratic governing document ever written. It's wonderful. It is the fundamental enabling document for our system of government. This is the place where America starts, but it's not the government of America, unfortunately. It enumerates self-evident truths. These are the rights and resources that our government is supposed to provide to us, the people. All men are created equal. Well, that's not true. We've never been that way. They are born with unalienable rights. Well, we say people have equal rights, but we know they don't. These rights can be taken away only by due process. That's true unless when it's not. If you're driving while black, you get picked up more often than if you're driving while white. The people must be treated equally by the government. Again, that's never been true. Governments are created by men to secure these rights. I'm glad to hear it. Let's start. If any government fails to secure these rights, it is the right of the people to replace it. Our government has continuously failed to secure these rights, so we are long past due a change. I recommend that we replace our current system of government with a modern, computerized version of Athenian democracy. Let's get after it. The people can structure the new government any way they please. Let's just use Athenian democracy. It's cool. The pursuit of happiness must be a reality. Yeah, so just because we can pursue happiness doesn't mean we actually have a chance to ever achieve it. So it makes no sense to say that we are free to pursue happiness if we have no real chance ever to achieve it. So this means that the government has never supplied us with this essential right. This means that our systems of government and economics must give each citizen fair and free access to the rights, resources, opportunities, and protections that will give her a fair and honest chance to go as far in life as her talents and efforts can take her, thereby giving her a fair and honest chance to build long lives worth living for herself and her loved ones, including a secure, comfortable retirement. Our current systems have failed utterly to provide the rights required by the Declaration of Independence. We, the people, have the right to replace these failed systems. It is time to replace our Madisonian Republic with faction-free democracy. Let's do it. And to replace tyranno-capitalism with democrato-capitalism. Something is tyranno when it works against the common good. Something is democrato when it works for the common good. So we are all going to love democrato-capitalism. Let's do it. What is the cause of this undemocratic failure of our systems? Evolution. Evolution by natural selection, to be precise. Charles Darwin's theory. It has produced two living varieties of our species, tyranni, who are aggressive, deceptive, selfish, and naturally work against the common good, and democrati, who are timid, open, unselfish, and naturally work for the common good. When tyranni aggressively, deceptively, selfishly push forward to take power, democrati timidly, openly, unselfishly step back to let them pass. We don't fight too hard. Tyranni use their power to work against the common good, and the cycle renews. Jimmy Carter, when he was president, demonstrated that he was a democratus. He naturally worked for the common good. Donald Trump, when he was president, demonstrated that he was a tyrannus. He naturally worked against the common good. The framers did not know about evolution by natural selection. They missed it by about 50 years, but they knew about bad men. James Madison warned us about these aggressive, deceptive, selfish men, and he was not alone. Here is what he said about them and the factions they form. By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. In short, factions work against the common good. Factions are formed by tyranni who join together in pursuit of public policies that work against the common good. Many factions are now at work: states' rights, global warming, misogyny, racism, homophobia, economic inequality, anti-science, xenophobia, creationism, inadequate health care and education, and more. The most dangerous of these is global warming. Older Americans may not be severely affected by global warming, probably because they're likely to drop dead long before the crash. But people under age 26 will have much to lose. They hope that they and their children will be able to enjoy long, fruitful, happy lives. But as our planet warms, their quality of life will be sacrificed as factions violently, selfishly seize power and squander, hoard, or contaminate essential resources in a planetary struggle for survival. It's going to be bloody. Our youngest Americans, those still in diapers, may face a heartbreaking decision as they approach the year 2045. As our climate worsens, those of childbearing age may well wonder if it would be fair to bring a child into a world that may be dangerous and suffocating, that may not hold a bright future for a newborn. The framers described the characteristics of tyranni who form factions. Alexander Hamilton in Federalist I said, of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, there he goes again talking about republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. There we go with tyrants. James Madison, Federalist 10, said, men of factious tempers, local prejudices, or of sinister designs may by intrigue, by corruption, or by other means first obtain the suffrages and then betray the interests of the people. George Washington, in his farewell address, said they, factions, are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men, tyranni, will be enabled to subvert the power of the people. Just look at the words the framers used to describe tyranni who form factions: factious, prejudice, sinister, intrigue, corruption, betray, obsequious, demagogue, tyrant, cunning, ambitious, unprincipled, subvert, insidious, undermining. The framers were describing men who were troublemakers, who were inclined to do evil, who were not trustworthy. They are tyranni. They would lie to get what they wanted, and they were without personal integrity. They were cunning, they would lay traps for the unwary, and they had no conscience. These men, these tyranni, have held positions of power in our systems of government and economics since the beginning, and they hold power today. They are everywhere. They're in Washington, D.C., millions of them, and in New York City, and all the capitals of Europe, and all the capitals of our states. Tyranni are everywhere. Our constitutional system has betrayed us. It supports and empowers factions, or as we modern Americans call them, political parties. Therefore, our systems of government and economics, more often than not, are controlled by factions, which naturally, inevitably work against the common good. Since the beginning, our systems of government and economics have mistreated the 7 groups of Americans. I call them the 7 hated groups, because if we loved them, we would not mistreat them as we do. We must replace our Madisonian republic with faction-free democracy and replace tyranno-capitalism with democrato-capitalism. Here are the 7 hated groups: the not white, the not male, the not Christian, the not heterosexual, the not well-to-do, the not native-born, and the disabled. Now look at those groups closely. You will see something interesting there. You will see that these groups, taken together, are a greater portion of our population. They are well beyond midpoint. They are the majority. For example, the not male category, which is the female, that's the largest part of our population. It's more than half the population right there. So you add in all these others, these 7 hated groups, why are they hated? They have all the votes. They should be in charge, but they're not. They're hated. They're mistreated. It is grotesque, but our system is creating an 8th hated group, school children. Our system enables the murder by gunfire of our children while they prepare for the day when they will have the liberty to live their own life in pursuit of their own happiness, all of which are rights guaranteed by the Declaration of Independence. But we don't let them do it because we shoot them. Such a tyrannical government has lost its right to rule and must be replaced. The overwhelming majority, taken together, the 8 hated groups make up the overwhelming majority of our population. If America were a real democracy, instead of an imaginary one, these groups would have long ago used their majority power, their votes, to change our laws so their groups would be treated at least as well as all other groups. But it hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? Because America is not a democracy. The majority is not in power. That happens in republics, not in democracies. Also, since the beginning, our systems have favored 7 groups of America. So we have 7 hated groups, and now we're going to look at the 7 favored groups. They are white, male, Christian, heterosexual, well-to-do, native-born, and the able. The 7 favored groups own or control almost all of America's wealth and power. The 7 hated groups own or control almost none. So if America, again, were a real democracy, then this ratio, this distribution, would be completely different.